Hello friends, Joe Lynch here from the Logistics of Logistics, and I am at Manifest 2025. It's the future of supply chain and logistics, and I am talking to my friend Jake Hoffman. Jake, please introduce yourself and your company and where you're calling from. You're at Manifest, but where are you normally at?
Sure. Hey Joe, Jake Hoffman, CTO at Gnosis Freight. We are based out of Charleston, South Carolina, and our company focuses on international freight, international shipping containers. Our software is container lifecycle management. So everything from the data of a shipping container to all the execution pieces that surround that. We focus mainly on BCOs, on shippers, but we also have products for freight forwarders, for drayage providers, and really anybody that touches an ocean shipping container.
So those first off, we should spell the name. How do you say Gnosis? I know how to spell it. Tell everyone how you spell Gnosis.
It's Gnosis, Gnosis, and it's a Greek word, and it's supposed to signify a learning through experience. And our CEO, Austin McCombs, did that on purpose because he wanted to jump into the logistics industry and learn things from a first-hand experience. And we have adapted our software over time from learning from our customers, learning directly from shippers, learning from freight forwarders, and we've adapted our platform over time. And that's where that Gnosis name really comes through in its meaning.
Yeah. So back to it, what problem are you solving for the owners of these containers?
So at a really basic level, we're telling them where their containers are. And we're telling them where the containers are. We're also telling them in parallel the digital status. So has it cleared customs? Is the container available for pickup? So just at a data level around the container. And then in parallel, there's all these execution pieces on top of that. We help them coordinate drayage management, their drayage deliveries, send a delivery order to a drayage carrier to go pick up the container at the port, deliver it to a warehouse, invoice automate. We help them audit their invoices from a BCO's perspective of a drayage carrier, an ocean freight invoice, any of those accessorials. Really anything that goes with moving an international shipping container, we help the BCO do in a digital and smart way.
Yeah, I think as soon as we got visibility on over the road, and a lot of that was through ELDs, we said, now I want it at the port, and I want it on the ocean, I want it on the rail, and it wasn't readily available because we didn't necessarily have sensors on everything. So how are you guys getting that information?
That's right, and I think putting all the data together is probably the hardest part. It's taking data, and we do this all ourselves. So we take data from the ocean carriers, we take data from the ocean terminals themselves, from the rail carriers, so the Class 1 rail carriers in North America, and then all over the world after that. And we take data from all these different places, and we mash it together in one data model. And you can think of it as a way as for our customer to see one Excel row. You got one container, one Excel row. What are the important milestones I care about? And it's the biggest source of truth for that customer from all these different data sources for them to just see what do they really care about in order to take action.
Yeah, it always reminds me when we talk about visibility, I don't care where the ship is, I care where my container is because my stuff is in the container and not necessarily on the ship. So when it gets to port, and we learned this during COVID, it got to port and somebody says that's the last we knew of it. It arrived at that port and who knows if it'll ever move again.
That's right, yeah, and that's where, especially during COVID, whenever all the ships were anchored off the port of LA Long Beach, there's all these news stories about 100 ships anchored off. That's where we would take the data around the individual terminal berthing schedules, and we'd understand which ships were going to go in and be unloaded first before the others, which would help us to give our customers better ETAs to their warehouse. And that was a huge deal back then. Now, when ships get rerouted around the Cape of Good Hope because of the Red Sea situation that's happening, or any of the different things that happen, our software allows us to quickly adapt and give our customers better ETAs because it's all based on live data of what's happening at different ports around the world, and then visibility to what's inside the container. Joe, you said you care about the container, you care about when it's going to get there, but really a lot of our customers care about what's inside of that. And so that's where we do a join of the data between the purchase order, the SKUs, the line items, what's actually in there inside that container to tell our customers this is when you can actually expect these goods in your warehouse ready to deliver to your customers.
Yep. So who typically owns these shipping containers? I know a lot of them are owned by the shipping companies, but are there also leasing?
They get leased. There's companies that own the containers. There's companies that own the actual vessels, and then the ocean carriers will lease the vessels out. There's the shared vessels, so it's all shared ownership across the board. That's what makes the data piece so confusing. on one singular vessel. There can be 4 or 5 different ocean carriers that all have containers on that vessel going to the same port, and according to each of their individual systems, will have different ETAs. That's just the nature of the business. That's the nature of how their each individual model works and how they project everything. And so it gets super confusing for our customers when they have 50 containers on one ship going to Charleston, South Carolina, the home space of Gnosis Freight, and they have not 50 different ETAs, they have 5 different ETAs.
Right.
And so that's where we kind of take all these containers together, we project our ETA of that vessel into Charleston and give our customers one unified source of truth.
Jake, if you and I owned containers, we would want to make sure they're being used. It would be all about utilization. And so I know you guys are talking about what's inside the container, but if we own containers, I want to make sure they're being used productively. And anybody who's worked in manufacturing or production or distribution has driven to a job where there's containers that sit in the parking lot for months at a time. And you go, are those decommissioned or forgotten?
It's a big use for a lot of the ocean carriers, a lot of the equipment owners, like we mentioned, is to figure out how to optimize that empty usage, how to reposition the empties. Michael Rentz, our CRO, always talks about it's like a $2 billion problem of how to reposition empties around the United States, just specifically the United States. And it's important because think about the way the United States operates is it's a whole lot of inflow, cargo coming into the metropolitan areas, and the exports is coming out of the rural areas. So you have Chicago, maybe an import hub, but then all the rural areas around Chicago.
It's got to go to Iowa and get the corn.
Exactly, to get all the agriculture out of Iowa, Nebraska, wherever else. And so it's a huge empty repositioning exercise to take it from the import center to the export center, get it reloaded.
Yeah, and then most of the containers that leave the United States to go back to China are empty.
It's air. Our biggest export is air, which is crazy.
Anyway, let's wrap this up. One more time, what problem does Gnosis Freight solve?
Gnosis Freight focuses on the international shipping container. And so our customers are shippers, freight forwarders, drayage carriers, anybody else. But for the most part, we work with shippers, BCOs around the world to help them solve anything that has to do with the international shipping container. The data around it, the execution pieces, whether that's allocating drayage, making sure trucks are picking up containers on time, the booking process, PO management, invoice auditing, any of the processes in parallel to moving an international shipping container around the world.
Yep. And so what problem would they, when they come to you, what problem would they say they have?
They say they don't know where their stuff is, they don't know when it's going to get there on time, and they have trouble executing all the manual processes that are involved with that.
And if you have those problems, you are wasting money.
That's right.
Anyway, Jake, thanks you so much for taking the time. Enjoy yourself at Manifest.
Thank you, Joe. Always a pleasure.